sulfur and color and noise. The sky over Lake Chatham split open in gold and white, a peony shell blooming so wide it seemed to brush the tree line on the far shore, and Hailey tipped her head back with her mouth open, the way she used to do when she was 5 and seeing snow for the first time. She was 15 now, and would have died before admitting she still loved fireworks. But her face gave her away every single time. The gold shell collapsed into red sparks that drifted down toward the water like something living, and the crowd on the municipal lawn exhaled together, 1,000 people making the same low sound, and the bass note of the next mortar thumped up through the ground into my shoes before the shell even cleared the tree line. "That one's called a brocade," Hailey said, pointing at the silver tendrils spreading across the lake's reflection. "Or maybe a willow, one of those." "You looked that up?" Obviously, I looked it up. You think I just know fireworks taxonomy? I think you look everything up and then pretend you've always known it. She hip-checked me and stole a handful of kettle corn from the bag tucked under my arm. The next shell was blue, a crackle spread that broke apart into 100 tiny reports like popcorn, and the crowd noise surged with it. Kids on shoulders, couples on blankets. The whole south lawn of Chatham Municipal Park packed tight from the Bandshell all the way to the vendor row near the parking lots. July 3rd. The town did its display the night before the 4th every year so people could drive up to the bigger show in Saratoga on the actual holiday. Lake Chatham sat 40 minutes north of Albany in the kind of small upstate New York town that ran on a volunteer fire department and a summer tourism season that lasted exactly 11 weeks. The park sloped down from Route 29 to the lakeshore, maybe 800 yards of grass and gravel paths, and they'd fenced the event area with those orange plastic construction barriers that wouldn't stop a determined raccoon. Hailey leaned into my shoulder. She smelled like bug spray and the funnel cake she'd eaten an hour ago. The lake reflected everything twice. Every burst had a ghost version of itself shimmering below, and the water was so still the doubles were almost perfect. "Thanks for driving up," she said, quiet enough that I almost missed it under the next salvo. "I drive up every year." "Yeah, but this year Mom said you might not." "Your mom says a lot of things. She said you had work stuff." "Hailey, it's a Tuesday. I close the store at 4. There is no work stuff that beats this." She didn't say anything else, but she stayed leaning against my shoulder, which was the 15-year-old equivalent of a hug. 2 years since the divorce. Every other weekend plus holidays. I ran a used bookstore in Troy that paid just enough to cover the lease and the child support, and Diane had primary custody. And every time Hailey leaned against me like this, I felt the specific terror of a man who knows he is one scheduling conflict away from losing the thread entirely. The next shell was a triple break. Red, white, and blue because, of course, the crowd cheered. Somewhere behind us a marching band was playing something brassy and loud from the Bandshell stage, and the food vendors were still working the grills. Charcoal and propane smoke mixing with the gunpowder haze drifting in off the water. That was when the first wrong sound happened. It came from the left, from down near the lakeshore where the crowd thinned out past the last row of blankets. A kind of barking cough, wet and repetitive, like someone choking on something. Not alarming by itself. People drank too much at these things. Someone was always sick in the bushes by 10 o'clock. But the sound moved. It didn't stay in one place the way a person hunched over and vomiting would stay. It slid laterally through the crowd noise, and a second later there was a different sound from the same direction. A woman's voice going high and sharp, the way voices go when someone falls or gets hit. Hailey straightened up next to me. "Dad? Somebody's sick. They'll handle it." Another shell went up, a massive report that shook the air, and in the white flash I saw people near the lakeshore standing up from their blankets, not panicking, just standing, looking toward something I couldn't see from 50 yards back up the slope. Then the PA crackled. Someone was trying to say something through the event speakers, but the fireworks were automated, and the next salvo drowned it out. 6 shells in rapid sequence that turned the sky into a strobe. Between the third and fourth shell, in that half-second gap of relative quiet, I heard the screaming. Not one person. Not the sharp yelp of someone startled. This was a wide, moving sound, coming from the lakeshore and spreading uphill like water flowing in reverse, and the people who'd been standing were now pushing backward into the people behind them. Dad, what's happening down there? Stay right next to me. I grabbed her hand. Her fingers were sticky with kettle corn sugar. Don't let go of my hand. I wasn't going to let go of your hand. The crowd compressed. That's the only word for what happened next. The people fleeing uphill from the lakeshore hit the dense packed standing crowd in the middle of the lawn, and the standing crowd had nowhere to go because behind them was more crowd all the way back to the vendor row and the parking lots. The compression wave traveled through the mass of bodies the way sound travels through water, and Hailey and I went from standing comfortably to being pressed chest to back against a man in a Hawaiian shirt who smelled like lighter fluid. "Move, move, move," the man was saying, but there was nowhere to move to. I pulled Hailey in front of me and wrapped both arms around her from behind. She was 5'4", 110 pounds, and the crowd was pushing from the left and the downhill side simultaneously, and her feet actually left the ground for a second, just lifted, carried by the pressure of bodies on all sides. "Dad, I can't breathe." "I know. Lean forward. Give your chest room." I didn't know if that was right. It sounded right. I was shaking so hard my teeth clicked. The fireworks kept going. A chrysanthemum shell turned the whole sky gold and lit up the crowd like daylight, and in that flash I saw the scope of it. The entire lakeshore section was in motion. People were falling. A stroller was on its side. Something was happening down at the waterline that I couldn't see clearly, but bodies were moving wrong down there, jerky and low, and the people closest to whatever it was were running so hard they were trampling the people in front of them. The next compression wave hit us from behind, which was the wrong direction, which meant something was happening uphill too. Hailey screamed. Not a word, just a sound, high and involuntary, and her hand slipped out of mine. The crowd surged to the right, hard. A whole section of people moving as a single body, carrying me sideways. I dug my feet in and reached for her. My fingers touched her sleeve, cotton fabric sliding across my fingertips. Then the surge pulled harder, and my arm went out to the side to brace against the Hawaiian shirt man. And when I looked back, Hailey was gone. Not gone. Moved. Carried 4, 5, 6 feet to the left by the crowd. And I could still see the top of her head, her brown hair with the little braid she'd put in that morning. And she was looking back at me with her mouth open. "Hailey, stay there! I'm coming to you!" Another surge. The opposite direction. The crowd was oscillating now, swaying like a ship in a storm. And each sway opened gaps and closed them. And the gap between us went from 6 feet to 12 to 20, and she was being carried downhill toward the lakeshore, and I was being pushed uphill toward the vendor row. "Dad!" Her voice cut through everything. Fireworks, screaming, the crash of someone hitting a fence, all of it. Her voice went straight into the center of my chest, and I fought the crowd. Elbows out, shoving. A woman slapped my arm and yelled something I didn't hear, and I didn't care. Every step toward Hailey cost me a collision with someone else's panic, and the crowd was winning. A knee hit the back of my legs, and I went down, hands on the grass, trampled. A boot caught my ribs. Another boot stomped my left hand flat into the mud, and I felt something pop in my ring finger, and the pain was white and electric and immediate. I got up. I don't know how. Something in me got up that was not my muscles and not my decision. Some animal thing that hauls a body upright when the alternative is being crushed. My left hand was wrong. The ring finger bent sideways at the middle knuckle, and I clamped my right hand over it and kept pushing through the crowd. She was gone. The spot where I'd seen her head was just bodies now, packed tight, moving downhill and to the left. Hailey! Nothing came back. The fireworks finale started. Whoever had programmed the show had set it on a timer, and the timer didn't know people were dying on the lawn below. 20, 30 shells a second, the sky turning white, the booming so continuous it became a wall of sound, and under it the screaming was just a texture, a harmonic, woven into the celebration like it belonged there. My daughter was somewhere in that crowd, and I was standing on a municipal lawn with a broken finger and blood on my knees and no idea which direction to move. The finale reached its peak. Every shell at once. The sky over Lake Chatham went solid white. For 3 seconds the whole park was lit like noon. In that light, I saw a man near the lakeshore bite a woman on the neck. Not a punch. Not a grab. His mouth was on her neck, and his hands were on her shoulders, and she was hitting his head with both fists, and then she stopped hitting and went limp, and he kept his mouth where it was. The light faded. The last shells popped and crackled and went out. The sky went dark. The automated fireworks display was over, and the screaming was the only sound left, and my daughter was gone. I pulled my phone out. The screen was cracked from when I'd fallen. My hands were shaking so badly it took 4 tries to get the passcode right. I called Hailey. It rang once, then nothing. No voicemail, no connection. I called again. The network was already choking. I sent a text. Where are you? It spun, unsent. A second text. I am coming to find you, stay safe. The spinning wheel again. I didn't know if either message went through. Somebody grabbed my shoulder and I spun around with my fist up, ready to hit whatever it was, and the flashlight from a phone caught me in the eyes. Hey, stop, you're bleeding. A woman's voice. Sit down. My daughter's down there. You can't go down there. My daughter is down there. I was shouting. The woman stepped back. She was maybe 30, stocky, wearing a volunteer staff vest, orange with reflective stripes. She had a walkie-talkie on her hip that was producing nothing but static. What's your name? She asked. Ben Oster. My daughter is 15. Her name is Hailey. Brown hair, she was wearing a green hoodie. She got pulled downhill when the crowd... Ben, I hear you. Half the people up here are looking for someone. The lakeshore is bad right now. Really bad. I need you to listen for 30 seconds. I don't have 30 seconds. You do if you want to find her alive. She said it without blinking, and it stopped me cold. Let me see your hand. I held it out. The ring finger was angled wrong and already swelling purple. She took one look and pulled a roll of medical tape from her vest pocket. I'm Sonia Reyes. I work the first aid tent. Worked. The tent's gone. Crowd went through it like paper. She taped my broken finger to the one next to it with 3 quick wraps, tight enough to hurt but firm enough to stabilize. What was she wearing again? Green hoodie, jeans, white sneakers. She's got a braid. 1 braid on the left side. Okay. Green hoodie, braid. That's good. That's specific. Which direction was the crowd carrying her? Downhill, toward the lake. Maybe left, toward the Bandshell. Sonia looked that direction. The Bandshell was a concrete half-shell structure at the south end of the park, maybe 300 yards from where we stood. Between here and there was the densest part of the crowd, now a churning mess of people trying to move in every direction at once. The screaming from the lakeshore had changed character. It was thinner now, fewer voices, which might have meant people had gotten out or might have meant something worse. The Bandshell's solid, Sonia said. If she's smart, she'll head for structure. Concrete, limited entrances. Is she smart? She looked up fireworks taxonomy on her phone before we came. She'll head for structure. Sonia finished taping my finger and released my hand. Route down through the vendor row is better than straight downhill. The crowd's thinnest along the vendor stalls because the fencing channels people onto the main paths. You go through the gap between the taco truck and the kettle corn stand. You come out on the south path, and that runs straight to the Bandshell. Come with me. She looked at her walkie-talkie. Static, looked back at me. Her eyes were steady, but her hands were shaking too. My tent had 6 people in it when the crowd hit. A woman with a broken collarbone and a kid having an asthma attack and 4 others. I need to find them. Sonia, vendor row, taco truck gap, south path, Bandshell. Go now while the crowd's still spreading out. In 10 minutes, that path's going to be packed with people running the wrong direction. She turned and walked toward where the first aid tent had been. I watched her disappear into the dark between 2 food trucks, her orange vest catching the light from a car's headlights in the parking lot above. And then she was gone and I was alone. The vendor row was 50 yards uphill. I ran for it. My ribs hurt where the boot had caught me, and my hand was a hot, swollen pulse at the end of my arm, and running felt like something my body was doing against its own advice. The grass was slippery with spilled drinks and something else, something dark that I didn't look at closely. A cotton candy cart had tipped sideways, pink floss dissolving in a puddle of lemonade. Someone's American flag blanket was tangled around a folding chair like it had tried to run. The taco truck was where Sonia said it would be. The gap between it and the kettle corn stand was about 4 feet wide, blocked by a folding table knocked on its side. I climbed over it. Condiment packets crunched under my shoes. Salsa and ketchup mixed together on the gravel, looking too much like something else in the dark. On the other side, the south path opened up, a gravel walkway maybe 10 feet wide, running downhill along the edge of the vendor row toward the Bandshell. It was darker here. The vendor stalls blocked the light from the parking lot. Someone had left a propane lantern burning on a table, and it threw a small circle of warm light that made the surrounding darkness feel deeper. In that circle of light, I saw a man sitting on the ground with his back against a tent pole. He was holding his left arm with his right hand, and his left arm was wrong. The forearm bent in a place forearms don't bend. "Hey," I said, "can you walk?" He looked up. Mid-50s, bald, wire-rimmed glasses sitting crooked on his face. His polo shirt was torn at the collar. "Compound fracture," he said very calmly. "The bone's not through the skin, but I can feel it shifting when I breathe. I can walk, but I can't carry anything, and I'm going to pass out in about 10 minutes from the pain." "Were you down by the lake?" "I was by the corn dog stand when the rush hit. Somebody knocked me into the tent frame, landed on it." He squinted at me through the lantern light. "You looking for someone?" "My daughter, 15, green hoodie." "I haven't seen her, sorry." He gestured with his good arm toward the south path, then winced. People were running that way, toward the Bandshell, big groups, fast. "Can you get yourself to the parking lot?" "Probably. if I don't pass out on the hill. Stay in the light. Someone will find you. I didn't know if that was true. It felt like the right thing to say, and saying it let me keep moving without the weight of leaving him. The first aid volunteer, Sonia, she's looking for people. Orange vest. Go find your kid. He said it the way people say obvious things, and he was right. I went. The south path curved along the backside of the vendor row, past darkened food trucks and a face-painting booth with its awning collapsed, the artist's palette trampled into the gravel with its rainbow of colors smeared into brown. A balloon animal, half deflated, a twisted giraffe lying in the middle of the path like a small dead thing. The smell changed as I moved downhill. Gunpowder still, that sharp sulfur tang that had been festive 20 minutes ago, but also something organic and wrong underneath it. The smell of a butcher shop left open in July. The screaming had died down in this section, but I could hear it continuing from two directions now. From the lakeshore to my right, and from somewhere up near the parking lots behind me, which meant whatever was happening had spread past the waterline and was climbing the hill. Halfway down the path, I heard footsteps behind me. Fast. I spun around, and my broken finger hit the edge of a table, and the pain was so immediate, I saw sparks. Whoa, sorry. A young woman, early 20s, hands up. She was breathing hard, wearing a tank top and shorts, a wristband on her arm that said staff. Are you going to the Bandshell? Yes. Don't. I just came from there. What? There's people in the Bandshell, but two of those things came up the shore path and got inside before anyone could block the entrance. It's bad in there. People are trapped in the back. My stomach dropped. There was a girl, 15, green hoodie. The young woman shook her head. I don't know. I was inside when they came in, and I went out the side gap. There were maybe 25 people in there. I couldn't see all of them. Some of them got out the back. Some didn't. Which side gap? South wall. There's a gap between the concrete and the fence, maybe 2.5 feet. You can squeeze through if you're not big. The things, the infected people, they didn't seem to notice it. They went straight for the crowd at the back. I have to go look. Man, I'm telling you, my daughter might be in there. She looked at me the way Sonia had looked at me. That calculating look that measures panic against probability. The side gap is around the left. Stay tight to the wall. If you hear them inside, do not go in. Just look. What's your name? Kristen Tran. I work the ticket booth. She was already moving past me, heading uphill. I'm going for the parking lot. There's got to be cops up there by now. Be careful. Yeah, she laughed, short and sharp and humorless. You too. The Bandshell appeared out of the dark. It was bigger than I remembered from the walk down. A concrete half-dome with a raised stage and metal folding chairs scattered across the seating area in front of it. The marching band had been performing here an hour ago. Their instruments were scattered on the stage, a tuba on its side catching a glint of light. Music stands knocked flat. Sheet music everywhere like oversized confetti. From inside I could hear sounds. Not screaming, something worse. Wet sounds, impact sounds. And underneath them, the low moaning that was becoming the signature of whatever this was. That grinding vocalization that didn't sound like pain or anger, just a machine running. I went left, around the concrete wall, pressing my body against the rough surface, feeling the cold of it through my shirt. The side gap was where Kristen had described it. 2.5 feet between the curved edge of the Bandshell and the park's perimeter fence. I pressed myself into the gap and looked around the edge. Inside the Bandshell, in the dim light from a few phone flashlights dropped on the ground, I could see the chairs overturned and scattered, and the people pressed against the back wall, and two figures moving among them that were not moving the way people move. One was the remains of a man in shorts and sandals. The other had been a woman, maybe 60, gray hair, a Chatham Municipal Park volunteer shirt. They were both focused on the back wall, on the cluster of people trying to get through a maintenance door that was either locked or stuck. No green hoodie. I scanned every person I could see. 12, maybe 15 people against the back wall. A man holding a chair like a shield. A woman with a child behind her. An older teenager with blood on his face. No green hoodie, no braid. She wasn't here. Or she'd been here and left through this same gap before the infected got in. I pulled back. My breathing was so loud I pressed my hand over my mouth to muffle it. The infected woman inside the bandshell turned her head toward the gap, and for 1 second she was looking directly at the space where I was standing. And I stopped breathing entirely, and her head turned away, back toward the cluster at the wall. I moved, south through the gap, out the other side, onto the rocky ground between the bandshell and the lake. The shore was 20 feet away, dark water lapping softly against rocks, and the boat launch was visible maybe 200 yards south, a concrete ramp going down into the water with a small parking area and an equipment shed. On the path between the bandshell and the boat launch, in the mud, I saw a footprint, a sneaker, small, pointed south, and next to it, another one. I followed the footprints. The mud was soft enough to hold them for maybe 50 yards before the ground went to gravel and they disappeared. But the direction was clear. South toward the boat launch. The boat launch parking area was empty except for one overturned porta-john leaking blue fluid across the concrete. The equipment shed was padlocked. No one was here. But the padlock on the shed was hanging open. The hasp was still closed, but the lock itself was unlatched, its shackle bent slightly out of true, and there were fresh scratches on the steel body. Someone had beaten it open. I pulled the hasp. Inside the shed was dark and smelled like gasoline and fish and old rope. I used my phone flashlight, sweeping the beam across the cluttered space. Life jackets on hooks, orange and faded, a coil of rope, oars stacked against the wall, a small outboard motor on a wooden cradle, and on the floor, by the workbench, a rack of emergency flares and a small first aid kit with its lid open and 2 butterfly bandage wrappers on the ground next to it, their paper backing torn off and discarded. She'd been here. She'd beaten the padlock open with a rock or a piece of metal. She'd found the first aid kit. She'd used the butterfly bandages on something. She'd taken what she needed and moved on. That's my kid. That is my kid. Breaking into a shed and patching herself up while her father was stumbling around in the dark with a broken finger and no plan. I took 2 flares and shoved them in my back pocket. I took a life jacket because it was bright orange and visible, and being visible might matter more than being hidden if she was looking for me too. Then I went back outside. The shore between the boat launch and the south end of the park was wild, unfenced, thick with brush and rocky ground that sloped unevenly toward the water. South of the park, the lakeshore curved around a point and became residential. Summer cottages with private docks and boat lifts, most of them dark. If Hailey had kept going south, she was heading into neighborhoods, but she wasn't going south to hide. She was looking for me, which meant she'd circle back. She'd try to get back to the main event area, to the spot where we'd been standing when the crowd hit, because that was the last place she'd seen me. And that's where you go when you're lost. You go back to where you last saw each other. That's what I'd told her when she was 7, and we got separated at the state fair in Syracuse, and she'd been sitting right where I'd told her to wait, eating a pretzel annoyed that I'd taken so long. She'd remembered then, and she'd remember now. I turned around, back toward the event grounds, back toward the screaming and the moaning and whatever was on that field in the headlight beams. The south path was worse now. The people who'd escaped the Bandshell through the side gap were moving north in small, terrified clusters, and they were meeting people still coming downhill from the vendor row, and the path was clogged with bodies going both directions. I pushed through. My taped finger hit someone's elbow, and the pain made my vision go gray for a second. Excuse me, coming through." "The parking lot's blocked," a woman said, grabbing my arm. Her eyes were wide and she had a scratch across her forehead that was bleeding into her eyebrow. "They're up there too, those people, the biting people." "I know. I'm not going to the parking lot." "Where the hell are you going?" "Back to the field." "Are you out of your mind? The field is—" I pulled free and kept moving. Past the face-painting booth, past the deflated giraffe balloon, past the taco truck gap. The vendor row was mostly empty now. The propane lantern was still burning, faithful and useless, its small, warm circle of light illuminating nothing but the empty chair where the man with the broken arm had been sitting. Gone. I hoped uphill. I hoped the parking lot. I hoped Sonia had found him. I cut through the gap between the taco truck and the kettle corn stand and came out on the north side of the vendor row, looking downhill at the main event field. It was bad. The field that had held 1,000 people 20 minutes ago now held maybe 100, scattered across the trampled grass in clusters and singles and crawling shapes. Most of the crowd had fled uphill to the parking lots or south along the shore. What was left were people who couldn't move, people who were looking for someone, and the infected. I could see them now, really see them, not just the flash-lit glimpse from the finale. There were maybe 15 or 20 on the field, moving in that wrong way I'd seen from the hilltop, low and lurching and directionless until they weren't, until something caught their attention, and they moved toward it with a sudden focused speed that was worse than anything else about them. They were spread out across the grass between the overturned blankets and the abandoned coolers and the bodies. Some of the bodies were moving, some weren't. Some were in the process of becoming something between the two. The field was lit by car headlights from the parking lot above, cutting across the grass in white beams that made everything look like a film set. In one beam I could see an infected woman in a sundress crouched over someone on the ground, her head moving rhythmically, mechanically. In another beam a man was crawling toward the vendor row, leaving a dark trail behind him on the flattened grass, pulling himself forward with his hands, and one of the infected was walking toward him from 20 yards away, unhurried, drawn by the sound of his movement. Somewhere out there was the spot where Hailey and I had been standing. The kettle corn bag was probably still on the ground where I'd dropped it. "You need to not go out there." A voice from behind me, low and firm. I turned around fast, fists up, adrenaline making the decision for me. A man was standing in the shadow of the kettle corn stand, mostly invisible except for the white of his sneakers and the reflective stripe on his jacket. He was tall, broad-shouldered, standing very still with his hands visible and open. "My daughter's out there." "Your daughter's not on that field. Nobody alive is staying on that field. Look at it. She might be coming back to where we were standing. It's what I taught her. Go back to the last place." He stepped forward into the lantern light. He was maybe 35, black, with a close-trimmed beard and hands that looked like they belonged to someone who used them for a living. His jacket said Chatham VFD on the chest, Volunteer Fire Department. You're with the fire department? Off duty. I was here with my nephew. He's 12. His name is Miles. He was in the Porta-John line when the crowd lost its mind, and I have been looking for him for 23 minutes. And I am telling you, that field is not where either of them are. His voice was controlled, but I could hear the machinery of the control, the effort it took to keep each word steady. He was scared. He was as scared as I was. He was just building a different structure around it. So what do? We go around. The perimeter fence runs along the lakeshore up to the Municipal Dock on the north side. If your daughter's circling back from the south, she'd come up the shore path, not across the open field. Nobody with working eyes would cross that field. She's 15. She's scared. Is she stupid? No. Then she's on the shore path, like every other living person who can still think. He looked at the field, then back at me. My name's Jerome Carter. I volunteer with the department. I know this park. The dock's about 400 yards north, and the shore path and the north entrance path both converge there. If she's moving, that's where the routes cross. Every cell in my body wanted to run onto that field. The pull was physical, gravitational, like the field was tilted and I was sliding toward it. My daughter had been standing right there, 40 yards downhill, and the fact that she wasn't there now didn't change the pull, because the last place I'd held her hand was on that grass, and going back to it felt like going back to her. Jerome watched me fighting it. He didn't say anything else. He just waited. The shore path, I said. The shore path. We go along the fence, stay in the dark, keep quiet. Sound draws them. The dock's about 400 yards. We move fast, and we don't stop for anything that isn't your kid or mine. We went. Jerome led because he knew the park better, and because my limp was getting worse, the rib bruise tightening with every step, and because every 30 seconds I had to physically stop myself from breaking right and sprinting onto the field. The perimeter fence was 4 feet of orange plastic mesh stapled to metal posts, useless as a barrier, but useful as a guideline in the dark. We followed it north along the lakeshore, stepping over abandoned coolers, a collapsed camping chair, a child's light-up sneaker blinking red in the mud, a half-eaten turkey leg, the debris of a celebration that had ended 40 minutes ago and 1,000 years ago. The field was to our left, visible through gaps in the vendor stalls. The infected were still out there. In the headlight beams I could see them moving from body to body, and the bodies were starting to move too, sitting up in that slow, wrong way, the newly turned joining the already turned, and there were more of them now than there had been 5 minutes ago. The math of it was obvious even to someone who ran a bookstore and hadn't done real arithmetic since college. The numbers were compounding. They're multiplying, I said, keeping my voice low. I can see that. In 20 minutes, that field is going to be full of them. Which is why we're on the shore path and not on the field. Jerome kept walking. His footsteps were nearly silent. Mine sounded like a horse on gravel. Keep your voice down, and try to step where I step. The shore path narrowed as we moved north. The park's landscaping got wilder here, overgrown bushes pressing in from both sides, untrimmed branches reaching across the path like fingers. The ground was soft mud that sucked at my shoes with every step, making small, obscene sounds. The lake was 5 feet to our right, black and still, reflecting nothing now that the fireworks were over. Just dark water and the faint smell of algae in the lap of small waves against the rocks. Ahead, I could see the Municipal Dock, a wooden T-shaped structure extending maybe 30 feet into the water. There were people on it. I could hear them before I could see them, low voices, a child crying, the creak of boards under shifting weight. Jerome held his arm out across my chest, and we stopped. "Hello on the dock," he called, quiet but carrying. "We're coming from the south. 2 of us, not hurt bad." A flashlight clicked on and swept toward us. "Come ahead." Slowly. We walked onto the dock. The boards were damp and the footing was uneven where planks had warped. There were 11 people on the dock, clustered at the far end near the water. A woman was holding the crying child against her chest, swaying slightly. An older couple sat with their legs over the edge of the dock, the woman's head on the man's shoulder. A teenage boy was lying on his back with a jacket folded under his head, and his eyes closed, blood visible on his temple even in the dim light. 3 others were standing, watching the shore, one of them holding a boat oar like a weapon. No green hoodie. A man with a flashlight came forward. He was short, wiry, with a deeply lined face and a Chatham Volunteer Fire Department t-shirt, same as Jerome's jacket. He and Jerome looked at each other with the recognition of people who've shared a roster. "Danny," Jerome said. "Jerome. Christ. You good?" "I'm looking for Miles." Danny shook his head slowly. "Haven't seen him. We've been here maybe 10, 12 minutes. People keep showing up from the shore path, mostly from the south side." Jerome's face didn't change, but something behind his eyes folded inward, a contraction that happened entirely behind his expression. "Who's been coming from the south?" "3 women right at the start, the couple over there, the kid with the head injury. A couple of people from the parking lot came down the hill about 5 minutes ago. Nobody matching a 12-year-old boy." "Has anyone seen a girl?" My voice came out too loud, and everyone on the dock flinched. I felt bad about it, and I didn't lower my volume. "Sorry, a girl, 15, green hoodie, braid in her hair." Danny looked at me for a second. Then his face changed. Recognition, but not of me, of what I was describing. "A girl came through here about 15 minutes ago, heading north on the shore path. She had a green jacket on, some kind of hoodie. She was moving fast and she was looking for someone." "That's her. That's my daughter." She didn't stay long, maybe 2 minutes. She asked if anyone had a phone that worked, and when nobody did, she asked about the closest safe building. I told her the North Shore path comes out at Heron Street, and she should try to get to the fire station on Route 29. Station 5. Concrete block, metal doors, generator. You told her to go to the fire station. It's the only hardened building in walking distance. If things keep getting worse, and they seem to be getting worse, it's the best option in this part of town. "How far is Heron Street from here?" "Quarter-mile along the shore. Then Heron runs uphill about 3 blocks to Route 29. The fire station's another quarter-mile north on the right side." I was already moving back down the dock, my feet finding the warped planks without looking. "Ben," Jerome caught my arm. "Wait. She's going to the fire station. I know exactly where she's going. And so do a lot of other people. Danny just told a 15-year-old girl to walk to Route 29 alone in the dark. We go together. We go smart. We go now." "Then come on." Jerome looked back at the dock, at the 11 people there, at Danny, who was watching him with the expression of a man who knows he's about to be left holding a position. "Danny, can you hold this dock?" "With what? A boat oar and harsh language?" "Keep the flashlight off unless you need it. Keep people quiet. If anything comes from the field or the shore, get in the water. They're slow and they seem to lock onto sound and movement. The water's cold, but it's shallow near the shore, and I don't think they can swim." "You don't think?" Best I've got. I'm sorry. Go find your people. Danny gripped Jerome's arm, a quick clasp at the elbow. I'll hold the dock. The North Shore path was different from the south side. Narrower, darker, the brush thicker and closer to the water. The trees overhead forming a canopy that blocked even the starlight. The lake was on our right, a flat black void, and the park was on our left. And beyond the park I could see the distant glow of the parking lot lights. And, fainter, the red and blue flash of emergency lights on Route 29. Sirens were layering up there now. Multiple vehicles. The emergency response had arrived and was doing whatever emergency responses do when the emergency is something nobody has a manual for. We moved fast. Jerome was quiet for a big man, placing his feet carefully on the packed earth, and I tried to match him. But I was limping worse now and breathing hard, and my hand was a drum of pain at the end of my arm. Every few steps a branch would catch my arm or my leg, and I'd flinch, every touch registering as a grab. You said she looked up fireworks taxonomy, Jerome said quietly, barely above a whisper. What? Earlier, when Sonia asked if she was smart. You said she looked things up. She sounds like she keeps her head. She does. She's better than me at most things. She reads the instructions before assembling furniture. She makes lists. She checks reviews before buying anything over $20. She is methodical in a way I have never been in my entire life. And right now, that is the only thing keeping me from losing my mind. Then she's at the fire station already. Or she's close to it. She's 15, she's not badly hurt. And she's got a destination. That's better than most people tonight. He was trying to help. I knew that. And he was probably right. But every minute she was out of my sight was a minute she might be stumbling into one of those things in the dark. And the fear was so enormous that it occupied physical space inside my chest, pressing on my lungs, making each breath feel like it was being rationed. The path curved around the north end of the lake. The brush opened up into a mowed area, a small beach with a roped-off swimming section, white buoys bobbing gently in the dark water, and beyond it a residential street with houses set back behind hedges and low stone walls. Heron Street. There was a street sign visible in the light from a single functioning porch lamp, and the houses were dark except for that one lamp and the blue flicker of a television in an upstairs window where someone was watching news coverage of the thing that was happening outside their wall. We came off the shore path onto pavement. The slap of hard ground after 20 minutes of mud and gravel felt like stepping into another world. Heron Street ran uphill away from the lake, straight and narrow, lined with old maples whose leaves rustled in a breeze that carried the last traces of sulfur from the fireworks. And something new, something acrid, like burning plastic or rubber. Under the third maple from the corner, something was on the ground. I stopped walking. Jerome stopped behind me. It was a person, face down on the sidewalk, arms at their sides, not moving. A dark stain extended from under the body's head across the concrete in a shape that looked like a map of nowhere. Go around, Jerome whispered. We crossed to the other side of the street. The person didn't move, didn't make a sound. As we passed under the porch light, I looked back and saw the unnatural angle of one leg, bent outward at the knee, and the stillness that was deeper than sleep. And I kept walking, 3 blocks uphill. Each block was maybe 100 yards. The houses were quiet, most of them dark, a few with the nervous glow of candles or flashlights moving behind curtained windows. A dog was barking somewhere to the east, frantic and continuous, the kind of barking that meant something was in the yard. At the second block we heard a window break, sharp and sudden, the sound carrying in the night air with that clarity that broken glass has. And Jerome put his hand flat on my chest. And we stopped and listened. A man's voice shouting, a door slamming, then nothing. We kept going. Route 29 was the main road through Chatham, 2 lanes with a center turn lane, and it was chaos. Cars were jammed in both directions, headlights making a solid river of white pointing east and red pointing west, and the horns were constant, a wall of sound almost as dense as the fireworks had been. Some cars were moving barely, inching forward a car length at a time. Others were stopped dead with their doors open and nobody in them, abandoned mid-gridlock. The sidewalk on both sides was packed with people walking, most of them heading east, away from the park, carrying bags and children and the stunned expressions of people who had not yet caught up to what was happening around them. The fire station was visible a quarter-mile to the right, north. A single-story concrete block building with 3 bay doors, the middle one open, red and white emergency lights flashing from the apparatus inside, casting the whole front of the building in alternating red shadow. People were streaming toward it on both sides of the road. "There," I said. "Come on." We joined the foot traffic on Route 29, moving against the eastbound cars, using the sidewalk when we could, and the road when the sidewalk was too packed. Nobody was stopping us. Nobody was stopping anyone. The normal rules of how humans move through space had been suspended and replaced by something simpler and older. Just movement. Just direction. Just the feet carrying the body toward whatever felt solid. We were 100 yards from the fire station when I heard my name. Not from the fire station, from across the road. From the parking lot of a hardware store on the south side of Route 29. Its security lamp throwing a cone of white light across a dozen parked cars and a pickup truck with its tailgate down. "Dad!" I turned so fast my ribs seized, and my vision went white at the edges, across 4 lanes of gridlocked traffic, standing on the hood of that pickup truck with her arms over her head waving, a girl in a green hoodie with a braid coming loose on the left side of her head. "Hailey!" I ran into the road. A car horn blared 6 inches from my hip. I put my good hand on the hood of a stopped sedan and went over it sideways, catching my hip on the side mirror hard enough to spin me halfway around. My feet hit the center lane. An idling truck, driver staring at me through the windshield with his mouth open, and I went around the front bumper. The southbound lanes were moving, slow but moving. And I had to wait, bouncing on the balls of my feet, legs shaking, until a gap opened between a minivan and a station wagon, and I sprinted through it and hit the far sidewalk and crossed the hardware store parking lot at a dead run. She jumped off the truck hood. Not gracefully. She slid off the edge and stumbled and caught herself, and then she was running too, and we met in the middle of the lot between a Honda and a Subaru. The hug was not gentle. She hit me at full speed, her arms around my neck, her face against my chest. 110 pounds of momentum that nearly knocked me backward off my feet. I wrapped both arms around her, and my broken finger hit her shoulder blade, and the pain went through my hand like electricity. And I did not move my hand. I did not feel it. I felt nothing except her body against mine. Solid and warm and shaking and real and alive. "Dad, Dad, Dad, Dad. I'm here. I've got you. I've got you. I went back to where we were and you weren't there, and I went to the Bandshell and you weren't there, and then those things came in, and I went out the side and I found the shed, and I fixed my hand. I cut it on the fence, and the man on the dock said the fire station. So I came up here, but it's full, Dad. There's too many people. They were turning people away from the bay doors. Slow down. Slow down. Are you hurt?" She held up her left hand. Two butterfly bandages held a cut closed across the base of her palm, the adhesive dark with dried blood, but the closure clean and tight. Fence by the boat launch. I climbed it to get away from the crowd. The wire caught me. You climbed the fence. You always said go to structure. There wasn't any structure that was open, so I kept going until there was. Jerome caught up behind me, breathing hard, bent at the waist. Hailey flinched back from him, pressing into me. He's okay, I said. This is Jerome. He helped me get here. I didn't find her, Jerome said, straightening up. She was already here. She found herself, and then she found you. Your nephew? I asked. Jerome looked toward the fire station. The crowd around it was dense, maybe 60 people now, more arriving from both directions on Route 29, and the firefighter at the bay door was gesturing people away, pointing east, pointing toward the school. He might be inside already, or he might be heading for the school. Hailey pulled back from me enough to look at my face. Dad, your hand. Broken finger, I'm fine. It's purple. Your whole hand is purple. I'm fine now. She looked at me with an expression I recognized because it was her mother's expression. The one that said, I can see exactly what you're doing, and it isn't working. The fire station is at capacity. A firefighter told me 20 minutes ago. He said the school is the collection point. Chatham Central, half a mile east. Then that's where we go. Jerome was scanning the road, the crowd, the roof lines of the buildings on Route 29. East is still clear as far as I can see. Whatever's happening, the center of it is the park and the lakeshore. We keep moving east. We keep ahead of it. Your nephew, Hailey said to Jerome. She said it directly, looking at him, her voice steady. What's his name? Miles. The woman at the door of the fire station had a clipboard. She was writing down names. If Miles is in there, his name's on that list. Jerome stared at her. Then he looked at the fire station, at the crowd, at the woman visible at the personnel door on the side of the building, clipboard in hand. Go check, I said. We'll wait. You don't have to wait. We'll wait. Go. He went. Across the road, through the crowd, up to the side door. The woman with the clipboard talked to him, checked her list, talked to him again. Jerome put both hands on top of his head, and I couldn't tell from across the road if his face was breaking or assembling until the woman stepped aside, and Jerome walked through the door. He came back out 40 seconds later with a boy. 12, skinny, Chatham Little League jersey, alive and unhurt, and grabbing Jerome around the waist with both arms. Hailey made a small sound next to me. Good, she said. That's good. Jerome walked back across the road with Miles tucked under his arm. The boy was talking non-stop, the way kids talk after being scared, a flood of words that was more about making sound than conveying information. The Porta-John line just went crazy, and I couldn't find you, and this lady grabbed me and said, come with us, and we ran to the parking lot, and her car wouldn't start, and we walked here, and they let us in, and I tried to call you, but my phone is dead. I know, buddy. It's okay. We're together. Jerome looked at me. His eyes were wet, and he didn't bother hiding it. The school? The school. We walked. 4 of us now, east on Route 29. Hailey on my right with her hand in my good hand. Jerome on my left with Miles glued to his side. The foot traffic was still flowing east, thinning now as we passed the commercial blocks and entered the residential stretch. The sirens behind us were constant. Ahead, maybe half a mile, I could see a cluster of lights that had to be the school. Hailey was talking. She talked when she was scared, always had, a continuous stream that was half information and half self-regulation. There were people in the water, Dad, when I was down by the shore, swimming, trying to get away, and some of the ones that were, the infected ones. They walked into the lake. Just walked straight in. They didn't stop. The water went over their heads, and they just kept going. They don't swim, they don't float. They just walk on the bottom. Good. That means the water's safe. The dock was safe too, but people were scared to stay there. The guy, Danny, he was trying to keep everyone calm, but people kept leaving. Danny's solid, Jerome said. He'll hold the dock. Is the school going to be safe? Miles asked. His voice was smaller than his body language suggested. He was pressed so close to Jerome they were almost one shape. The school's concrete block and it's got a generator, Jerome said. There'll be sheriff's deputies there, maybe fire, maybe EMS. It's the rally point for the east side of town. What if they're there too, the infected? Then we keep going east. We keep moving until we find somewhere they're not. The school appeared ahead. Chatham Central, a long flat building behind a chain-link fence topped with that angled overhang that's supposed to discourage climbing. The parking lot was filling up. Cars at angles, people on foot streaming in through the main gate. A county sheriff's cruiser with its lights on at the entrance. An ambulance parked crosswise behind it. Someone had propped the main doors open with orange traffic cones, and people were filing in, guided by flashlights and the fluorescent glow from inside. We joined the flow. At the door, a woman in a reflective vest was doing a head count with a tally counter, clicking once for each person who entered. She also had a clipboard, and she was writing. Injuries? She asked, looking at my swollen purple hand. Broken finger, already taped. Her? Pointing at Hailey. Laceration on my palm, closed with butterfly bandages. It's not deep. Him? Pointing at Jerome. We're good. I'm looking for confirmation that my nephew is accounted for. Miles Carter. He was already checked in at Station 5. If he's with you now, I'll add him to this list. Name and age for each of you, please. We gave our names. She wrote them down. 4 more clicks of the tally counter. 4 more entries on a list that already filled 2 pages, front and back. Inside, the hallway was bright and loud, and smelled like floor wax and sweat and fear. The fluorescent lights buzzed with that specific frequency that every school hallway in America shares. People were sitting along both walls, on the floor, on folding chairs, on stacked gym mats dragged out of a storage closet. Someone was distributing water bottles from a cardboard case. A man in a Chatham Fire Department shirt was talking into a radio, getting fragmented responses between bursts of static. Hailey pulled out her phone. Her hands were shaking. She thumbed the screen and held it to her ear. Mom. Her voice cracked on the single syllable. Mom, I'm okay. I'm with Dad. We're at the school, Chatham Central. A pause, long enough that I could hear Diane's voice, high and fast, leaking from the speaker. I'm okay. Dad found me. We're together. Another pause. I know, Mom. I know. I will. I love you too. She hung up, wiped her eyes with the back of her bandaged hand. She's in Saratoga. She saw the news. She's coming. She can't drive into this. I told her that. She's coming anyway. Fair enough. I would too. Jerome steered us toward a spot along the wall where a gap existed between a family of 5 and a man sitting alone with his head in his hands. We sat down. The linoleum floor was cold through my jeans. Miles sat between Jerome's knees, still pressed against him, eyes wide and moving, watching every person who walked past. Hailey leaned against my shoulder. The weight of her was the most real thing in the world. More real than the pain in my hand, more real than the noise, more real than the sirens outside, and the fluorescent lights, and the woman at the door still clicking her counter. Dad? Yeah. I wasn't scared the whole time. Parts of it I was just doing things, breaking the lock, climbing the fence, fixing my hand. It was only when I stopped moving that the scared part caught up. Me too. Is that normal? I think that's how it works. Your body does the thing first. Your brain catches up later. She pulled the sleeve of her green hoodie over her bandaged hand and tucked it against her stomach. I knew you'd come looking for me. That's the thing I kept telling myself. The whole time. He's coming. He's looking. So all I have to do is keep going, and eventually we'll find each other. Because you always come to find me. My throat closed. The words she was saying were simple, and they went through me like voltage. You didn't need me to find you, I said, when I could talk. You got yourself out. You broke a padlock with a rock, Hailey. It was a really good rock. Very solid. Perfect heft. I'm proud of you. I know, Dad. She closed her eyes. Her breathing slowed. Not sleeping. Resting the way you rest when the running is done and the floor is solid and someone you trust is sitting next to you. Jerome met my eyes over the top of Miles's head. He nodded once. The nod contained everything we'd walked through, and nothing that needed to be said. Outside, through the propped open front doors, I could see the parking lot, the flashing lights of the sheriff's cruiser, and beyond them the dark road heading east and the sky above it still carrying a faint haze of smoke and sulfur from the fireworks display that had ended an hour and a lifetime ago. The haze caught the glow from the emergency lights and turned the whole sky a dim, pulsing orange, like the ghost of the finale that wouldn't quite fade. The woman at the door was still clicking her counter, still writing names. People were still arriving, in ones and twos and small frightened groups, coming out of the dark into the light of the hallway, giving their names, sitting down. My phone buzzed. A text from Diane. Tell me you're both inside somewhere safe. I typed back with my right thumb, slowly, my left hand too swollen to help. Chatham Central School. Both here, both okay. Hailey is incredible. 3 dots appeared. Then, I know she is. I'm coming. Stay there. I put the phone in my pocket, looked at Hailey. Her eyes were closed, her braid half undone, a smudge of dirt on her jaw, dried blood on the butterfly bandages across her palm. She was breathing slow and steady. A woman came through the front doors carrying a case of bottled water on her shoulder. I stood up, ribs protesting, and walked over and took one side of the case with my good hand. We set it on the folding table by the door. She looked at my swollen hand and winced. You should get that looked at. There's a nurse in the gym. Later. I went back to our spot. Hailey hadn't moved. I sat down next to her and she shifted without opening her eyes and leaned into my side again, her weight settling against me with the familiarity of 15 years of leaning. Her left sneaker was untied. The lace had come loose sometime during the night, during the running, the climbing, the walking in the dark, and the end of it was frayed and damp with grass and mud and lake water. I reached down with my good hand and retied it. A simple knot, then a double. The lace was wet, and the knot was clumsy, one-handed, but it held. Hailey didn't wake up. I pulled the bow tight, tucked the ends, and leaned back against the wall.